गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। नमामि गौडपादं च शङ्करं श्रीसुरेश्वरं स्वामिनं सच्चिदानन्दमिन्द्रं तं ज्ञानरूपिणे। ओम नारायण नारायण नारायण। ओके। अध्यास शंका. So Adhyasa Bhashya, having divided Adhyasa Bhashya into certain parts, for instance 9 parts. So first part he takes that is Pratignya Vibhaga, Adhyasa Pratignya. Pratignya means a statement, what is going to be proven later. Generally in catch marta ide, I don't know. Lawyers in the beginning, you see, to understand the pratignya, I'll give you just one example. Lawyers when they submit their case, in the beginning they will put the basic essential statement. Statement means what is their case, what do you want to say, that will be your basic statement. Based upon that alone you have to argue in future. Only within the limit you want to prove this point and this and this. That is the essential pratignya. In Sanskrit we call, when the two people try to discuss, come together to discuss, each one has to make his own pratignya. In Shankaracharya's biography, when we see Shankaracharya goes to Mandana Mishra, in the beginning of a discussion, first they present their pratignyas. Pratignya means their basic essential point, that is enunciation, you may call. Your statement, your enunciation. What is your stand, or in other words, your stand. So they present their pratignya. And that alone you are going to discuss throughout the case. The lawyers do. Similarly here, pratignya is what he is going to say, what he is going to discuss in Adhyasa Bhashya. It is Adhyasa Pratignya. Adhyasa Pratignya is the first portion. Now, in that Adhyasa Pratignya, there are 2 sentences. First sentence raises an objection or doubts the very Adhyasa. He says that there is no Adhyasa possible. Now, let us come to the beginning point. Moksha, you attain moksha as a result of jnanam. That jnanam can remove ignorance. What is that ignorance? Knowledge can remove only misunderstanding, called ignorance. The same misunderstanding we call as adhyasa. Now first we have to prove that there is an adhyasa in our life. Proving means pointing out. We have to point out that there is a misunderstanding, there is an adhyasa in everybody's life. And that adhyasa or a misunderstanding is a cause of all our samsara. If once adhyasa is understood as the cause of it, then we can do Atma Vichara, and Atma Vichara will remove the ajnana, remove the adhyasa. So here the first sentence objects or doubts or rejects, let us say. He doesn't accept, he rejects that there is an adhyasa in our life. In our very life, there is an adhyasa, and that adhyasa is the cause of samsara. He doesn't want to accept, and he says that how can you say that there is a mistake, there is a misunderstanding at the root of our samsara. There is a misunderstanding at the root of our samsara. On account of that root, all this samsara is going on. So he says, how can there be? He says there is no possibility. Therefore he says, samsara is not due to adhyasa. His implication is, first, adhyasa is not possible, therefore there is no adhyasa in our life. There is no misunderstanding, there is no bhrama, there is no bhranti in our life. But whatever we are experiencing, the samsara which we are experiencing, is a real experience, it is not a misunderstanding. If it were now what happened? If it is established to be misunderstanding, oh, somebody is trying to ring. I don't know why he rings. Okay, I'll close this and restart. Okay, I'll finish this and restart. Just give me a few seconds. Restart, probably I may change the network. And also that DND I press it. I pressed DND again. How he did it, I didn't know. Okay. He says, okay, Satyanarayana, don't telephone. Now class is going on. Don't disturb. So, somebody objects. Vedantin's view is that there is adhyasa. Oh, power went off. In fact, there is no power. Morning, whole day, there is no power. It was there for a short while, 10 minutes, and went off again. Anyway, you can listen. You may not be able to see, but you can listen. So, Vedantin's view is adhyasa, because jnanam can remove only adhyasa. Come from that thing. We want moksha. And Upanishad says, Brahmavit apnoti param. One who knows Brahman as the Atma, he attains moksha. So, by knowing Brahman as yourself, you will be able to attain moksha. So, in this, the implication is that the knowledge, by knowing alone, you attain moksha and nothing more to be done. The very knowing is enough. This shows that the interception for moksha is only that much which can be removed by knowledge. See, the interception, if interception was only ignorance, then knowledge alone can do. If interception is not only ignorance and something more, and that more has to be removed. Now, what is the interception for me and for my moksha? If moksha is my swarupam, if moksha is my swarupam, then interception is only that I don't know that I am already liberated. I think that I am not liberated. So this thinking, being liberated, I think that I am not liberated. Being mukta, I think that I am not mukta. Then it is a clear case of misunderstanding. Because you have a thinking, you have a thought, you have a conception about yourself against your real nature. Your real nature is you are already mukta, you are already free. But you have a thought about yourself, you have a conception, you have a notion about yourself that I am not liberated, I am somebody else. I am a non-liberated, I am non-Brahman, I am somebody. So that I am somebody who is not liberated is a conception, is a notion which is against your reality. So what Vedanta has to do is correct that notion. Disprove that notion is not true to your nature. Your nature is one, and you have a notion about yourself which is exactly opposite to your real nature. So this misunderstanding or a notion has to be disproven. Now the moksha is not something you have to newly acquire, nor it can be newly known. Only your misunderstanding that you are not liberated has to be disproven. Therefore, that wrong notion is adhyasa. And what jnana does is only can correct it or disprove it or dismiss it, whatever you call it. Correct it, destroy it, disprove it, and show that it is not true. Your true nature is something, and your notion about yourself is totally opposite to it. This much has to be told. And therefore, this misunderstanding is at the root of all your samsara. So once you correct that misunderstanding, then no samsara. That's all. This is the Vedantin's view. Keeping this Vedantin's view, somebody objects, a shanka, a doubt or an objection. He says, how can you say that at the root of the samsara is a misunderstanding? Okay, then what do you mean to say? He says, misunderstanding is impossible. A misunderstanding or adhyasa or a wrong notion or error, whatever the term you use, is impossible. Then what is this samsara? He says samsara is really there. I am a samsari is a fact of life. If I am a samsari is a fact, how can you remove? And he may have his own option, his own his own method, his own alternative, let us say, his own alternative. He says samsara is really there. You have to do something to remove the samsara, to forget the samsara. It is something like, if there is a real problem, you have to really remove it. Really remove it. Really removing means you have to make some effort. So, what if the problem is real? If something is real, you can't remove it permanently. You can only suppress it. You can only cover it up. You can only tentatively suppress it. That's what we can do. Therefore, by karma, by any karma is only, what can karma do? Karma can bring only 4 kinds of results. Karma can produce a new thing. Karma can produce, like we can produce a tree, or we can build a house. Building a house is totally a new production. One is a production. Second is a transformation. You change milk into curd, or you change something into another form. One is a production, that is utpadyam. Another is vikaryam. Vikaryam is a transforming. So karma can do only these 4 kinds of results. One result is a production, second is a transformation, third is only purification, that is a renovation. One is a building, another is totally modifying the house, third is just painting alone, painting and etc. only superficial, not even renovation. Renovation can be called as a transforming it, changing it. So one is a building the house, the second is a renovation, third is only painting. Painting and cleaning, only superficial. Cleaning, painting. Cleaning means removing the cobwebs and dust and all, and then put a painting. Superficial cleaning and purifying. Just cleaning. Fourth thing is, you are living elsewhere on a rented house. Now you come to this house. It is acquiring the house. Come and start living it. This is called apyam. Apyam means reaching it. Apyam means reaching it. So, building house is a production, renovation is a transformation, simply purifying, cleaning is only a purification, samskaryam, Then apyam is coming and enter into this house and start using it, start living here. So karma can, anywhere you take it, all kinds of karma, whether worldly karma or religious karma. Religious means shastriya karma. One is a secular karma or religious karma, or any kind of karma, when man-made karma or nature-made karma. Even nature also can do only these 4 types of results. 4 types of results are possible with all kinds of karmas put together. There is no 5th kind of result. So, if samsara is real, that I am karta, bhokta, that I am, what is samsara? I am subject to birth and death. That I am forced to do certain karmas. Because I cannot live without doing something, I must do. I am made to do some karma. Once I do karma, I have to choose. This choice is there, willpower is there, I have to choose continuously. Because you can't live without choice, because an animal an animal which is programmed like a machine has no choice. It has no willpower. Things happen mechanically, being prompted, being forced by something like a machine which is already programmed. You switch on, the video goes on, the CD runs on its own. It doesn't have a will to stop. Similarly, animals have a programmed life, or machine and inert objects don't have a freedom, don't have a choice, but human being has got a choice, has a freedom, free will. So this free will is called kartrutvam. Now free will is such a thing, you have to continuously use the free will. There is no chance that you can't use it. If you sit idle, even that is a free will. I don't want to do, that again is a free will. Whether you do is a choice. I don't want to do also is a choice. So you can never be without choosing something. Something or other you choose, and that choosing is karma. Karma will have a result. Both 2 kinds of result. One is a drishta-phalam, another is adrishta-phalam. Drishta-phalam is the worldly result. Adrishta-phalam is punyam. Therefore, every karma has got a drishtam and adrishta-phalam. Drishta-phalam is the visible, seen result, which can be materially ascertained, which can be secularly seen. Adrishta-phalam means cannot be seen except without the Shastra and without the Divya Drishti. Some yogis having a Divya Drishti can see, or can Shastra can tell. Other than that, we can't see directly with our pratyaksha, with our perception and inference. With our pratyaksha and anumana we can't see. So, we have a will, and that will is continuously operating, and you have no choice. Only in sleep there is no will. In deep sleep there is no will. As long as you are awake, you are a karta. You are a continuously karta. Then bhokta. I am continuously subject to experience pain and pleasure. I have no choice. Things happen, you see, as you wake up from your sleep. The moment waking state begins, you see that your sense organs are switched on. Your mind is switched on. Whatever is in the world, you come to experience, you come to see. You have no choice. Do you have a choice whether I should wake up or not? In sleep, do you think and make a decision to wake up and then wake up? No. You find yourself awake, that's all. In fact, nobody wakes up. Waking up is a verb. In English, waking up is a verb. Nobody does an action of waking up. You only find yourself awake, that's all. How, you don't know. You find yourself awake. You find yourself a person perceiving the objects and experiencing pain and pleasure and what you call anukula, pratikula, favorable, unfavorable experiences. Isn't it? So, bhoktrutvam, that is an enjoyership, is there. And kartrutvam, the will and action continuously choosing, identifying is there. And jnatrutvam, your sense organs and mind is on continuously. They are thinking and knowing and thinking and knowing. This knowing, thinking stops only in deep sleep. When you are awake, during your waking state, I am a jnata, I am a karta, I am a bhokta. I am forcibly karta, bhokta, jnata. Do you have a choice? You can't choose to be non-karta. Because I am a karta. Whatever happens, I take it upon myself that I am doing it. Whatever experience I undergo, I feel, I experience the experiences. I have no choice. So therefore, karta, bhokta, jnata is a choiceless experience. This is jiva bhava. So, As a karta, you can choose between two karmas. Whether I should do this or do that. Whether I should go this way or that way. You have a choice. Whether I go or I need not go, I can continue to sit here, I have a choice. But some choice you must make, you have no choice. Some choice you must make. Even if you sit idle, that is a choice. Therefore, choice or a choosing, kartrutvam is inevitable. In kartrutvam, you may choose between two options, but choosing is inevitable. See the difference? Choosing is inevitable. Choosing has an option. Option in what? You choose this action or that action. You have a choice between the actions, but you have no choice whether to act or not act. Some action must take place. Whatever you are, the action is. This is called kartrutvam. It is a choiceless kartrutvam. You are helplessly karta. You have no choice. The kartrutvam is suspended in deep sleep. And once you are awake, you find yourself to be karta, bhokta, jnata. Okay? Jnata, the knower. Karta, the doer. Doer means continuously choosing, continuously using the will. Sometimes you say because of the bad habit, because of the drinking and etc. in that mood, I didn't know and something forced me to do it. See, something you drink. In a drunken mood, you end up doing something wicked action. Some illegal action, some adharmic action, some papa. Some papa karma you do it, then also you will incur papa. Because before you drank, you know that if I drink, this will happen. Then knowingly you drank and knowingly you made your mind helpless. Then in the helpless also some choice is taking place. In that also whatever you choose, because if the choice is forced upon you, if the force is due to external pressure, okay, you won't incur sin. See, this is a difference. If somebody threatens me, forces me, you must do it, otherwise I will kill you. If somebody forces you to do something, then that papa you won't incur. But due to your own inner weaknesses, due to your inner desires, if you do it, then you will incur papa. That means punya or papa, doing some action is inevitable. So only you have a choice between whether this work or that work, or whether you do or sit idle. See, in voting, you vote. Even if you don't vote, you are taken for granted that your voting is, somewhere it is already accepted. See, I offer you something. If you take, it is an action of taking. If you refuse, if you don't take, that is an action of refusing. Even refusing is an action. See, even that is an action because you have chosen not to take. You can't say, I have not exercised my choice. We have to say, you have chosen not to take. Okay. So even sitting idle is a karma. Doing is a karma. Sitting idle is a karma. Then why not we do? Okay. In doing is also between two karmas, you choose either this or that. But some choice is already there. Okay. So you are karta, bhokta, jnata. Helplessly you are. Second, you are subject to birth. Have you chosen to take birth? No, you have no choice. You are born. You find yourself to be a baby born. That's all. You are a baby seeing the world, experiencing the world. Death also you have no choice. Sometimes people may consciously commit suicide. That is an exceptional case. But you have no choice. Even if you don't attempt any suicide, you keep on living. How long you live? You live for few more years, few more extra, 100 years. Some people may live 120, 130. And I think I have not seen a person crossing 150. Maximum 130, 140, around that body has to, you have to leave the body. So death also happens, it is your choiceless. Birth is a choiceless. That means you are forced to take birth. That means you are forced to remain in this body. Through this body you are forced means you are helplessly acting through this body. So you are interacting with the world through this body. So you are confined to this body. You are supposed to live for some time. You have no choice. Living in the body, you may change places. Sometimes you have no options. Option is less. You have a family, you have a responsibility, and you have a money and job here. Even if you love to go elsewhere, Bangalore, you can't go. You have to remain in Holinarspura only. That means the circumstances are such that you have no choice. So, like this, there are many help. Even if you have a choice, you have a limited choice. Within this area alone you can choose. Your choice is not limitless. Okay. Even your choice is also within this area alone you can choose. This is called samsara. You know what I have described? What I have described is a samsara. Samsara means you are helplessly in a situation which is not to your liking, which is limited, uncomfortable, brings a little happiness and little unhappiness. You want to be a better person, you want to be a freer person, but you have no choice. You are helplessly bound to an area, bound to a situation, bound to be a particular person. Within that you live. This is called samsara. Now you got it. What is samsara? So, now this Purvapakshi says that this samsara is your real nature. This is your nature. It is not a due to your misunderstanding. It is not an acquired one. It is not falsely put upon you. It is really you. You are really karta bhokta samsari. Why? Misunderstanding, adhyasa is not possible, adhyasa is not there. If it were misunderstanding, if it were adhyasa, then what you said, what Upanishad told that, okay, come on, do inquiry, tattva vichara, you do it, atma vichara, as a result of self-observation, as a result of self-inquiry, that misunderstanding will be disproven, that you are a samsari will be dismissed or disproven, understood as a wrong, and I am liberated is understood as a truth. Once you understand, then you are free. So if samsara was due to misunderstanding, or samsara was due to adhyasa, adhyasa means falsely taken to be there, though it is not there. If I had falsely taken to be a samsari, then jnana would have been useful. The tattva vichara, self-inquiry and jnanam would have been useful. But if samsara is real, what can jnanam do? Therefore, don't do atma vichara, brahma vichara, all vedanta, vedanta, all this we don't want, we are useless. Okay, samsara is real. Then what should you do? Do something to suppress your kartrutvam, bhoktrutvam. But doing something bring about some change in your mind. If possible, you may remove the samsara, or tentatively suspend it, or at least minimize it. They think that by karma, what can you do? Your kartrutvam, bhoktrutvam, you can go into a better situation. You can assume a better body. Now you are in a human janma, manushya janma and manushya sharira. You can assume a better loka and better sharira. For that, whatever is required, do some karma. Do some ritual karma, some yogic sadhana and something. You will assume a better body. You will live in the better loka. You will have a more freedom. You will have a better choice. Okay. So you will have a better field, better experience. You are not so easily subject to birth and death. Because the physical body is too frail and vulnerable. Because it is so vulnerable to winter, summer, heat and cold and pin pricking, small thing it cannot stand. It gives you pain. Something little happens, you hold your breath for a few seconds, 10 to 20 seconds, that's all, you are dead. I think more than 10 seconds nobody can stay, 10 or 20. Maximum if you do pranayama, you may stay for another 20 seconds, that's all. That means how delicate, how vulnerable we are. How frail is the body. Fragile is the body. Just heat it cannot stand. Water it cannot stand. If there is no breath you can't stand. No food you can't live more than few days. Oh, with this body what kind of happiness you can hope for? You are continuously haunted by the fear of death. Aren't you? Continuously. Any moment something can happen. There is an insecurity. There is a fear. There is a worry. There is a tension. There is an attachment. You miss many people. You love people and you miss them. All this is samsara. This is samsara. And this is a human condition. And which you have not chosen. Have you chosen consciously to be a samsari? To be in this condition? I don't know. I find myself in this. Am I not? I find myself in these conditions. I have not consciously chosen. Okay. Then where am I to go? Therefore, Vedanta says, you have a choice. You can do some karma. You can do some karma. By doing karma, what happens? You can get a slightly better situation. Instead of this house, you will have a better income and better house. You will have more comfortable life. You will have little more enjoyments, objects of enjoyment. If you have a good health and you do yayama, exercise and health, etc., if you stay at home and don't go out, and then you will be protected from getting infected by coronavirus. Like this, by doing karma, you can avoid it for some time, but sometimes you cannot avoid. You go for a small few minutes to get your vegetable, some fellow comes and touches you and you get infected. See, how much you have a choice, even choice is limited. Within that alone you try. But sometimes unexpectedly, unknowingly something happens. Do you have absolute freedom? Our freedom is limited. Our choice is limited. In spite of our choice, certain things happen unknowingly, unconsciously, beyond our capacity, and you are subjected to some suffering. Birth, I have no choice over my birth. I have no choice over my death. I am subjected to this thing. You may prolong by taking care of your good health. You may prolong your life for few more days or few more months or maximum few more years. But can you permanently stall your death? Can you permanently stall your death? Can your body... I tell you, if body becomes too old also, you yourself feel that it is better to get rid of this body. How long I should hold on to this old, diseased, weakened, worn out body? Old, aged, worn out body, how long can I retain it? Because I can't walk, I can't do on our own, somebody has to help me. How long I should depend? Let me better get rid of. Therefore, death is also natural. So in this limited situation, now I want to get rid of, then what is option? Somebody says, Purva Pakshi, this is your real nature, you have no choice, all your choice is within karma. Karma can make minor changes, superficial changes, you can have a slight, if you are a more yogic person, do lot of punya karma, you will get a better loka, heaven and all. You may get to Pitraloka, heaven loka, other loka, you will have a better body, but some body is inevitable. Your body will be better than this body, but that body also is subject to death one day. You will have a better life. Better doesn't mean totally free from problem. Better doesn't mean totally free from samsara. You will have definitely a better life. You will have more money, more comfortable, your emotions are more stable. Unlike the human life, how your emotions are so unstable. You cannot trust people, you can't depend on people, easily they hurt you. See, you love somebody and they just don't care for you. For a small thing, they get hurt and abuse you and then disrespect you and go away. They hurt your feelings and go away. And later they regret. You don't know whether you trust them or not trust them. They hurt you. Again, still they love you. Should you love them or reject them? These are all very painful relationships. We don't know whether to love or reject them. Because you want them. And you want them to love you. They love you, but in some moment they will hurt you. Not that intentionally. Sometimes they intentionally want to hurt you out of ego. Sometimes unintentionally they are helpless and they end up hurting you. Unconsciously, unintentionally hurt you. And they don't know how to feel. Because they are already in that disturbed mood. In the disturbed mood they hurt you. You feel deeply hurt. You feel deeply cheated. Now what will you do? And that will take for months. Some people don't recover for years also. That I am deeply cheated in my love and in my care and understanding. So you won't recover for years together. Some people go into depression. Some people, by the time they recover, 10 years are gone. Whole life in between is a lot of suffering. I am talking, see what a frail human life is. Both body, mind and sense organs and your prana, all this. So with this, how can you hope to be totally free and happy? Totally free from death, totally free from fear, totally free from insecurity, totally free from any worry, totally free from any pain. You are totally free and happy and ananda. How can I be? And Purva Pakshi says, this is not due to any mistake or misunderstanding or false imposition. It is not imposition. That I am samsari, that I am subject to this sukha, dukkha, etc. These are all a reality of you. Once it is real, let us do some karma. Tentatively suppress it. Tentatively suspend it. Sometimes 1 hour let us do meditation. You will forget all problems. Let us go to the park and play so that 1 hour you will forget your samsara. Isn't it? If you have a problem or somebody told, why do lot of karma, yajna, puja, I will give you a shortcut. Take a drug, brown sugar or something, marijuana, or take some drink, that's all. 1 hour you will have a moksha, you have no problem. But how long you will have such moksha? Moksha means forgetting the problem, escaping the problem, not solving the problem. Because he is deeply hurt by the pressure of the life, pressure of relationship, pressure of relating to the world and relating to the life. Taking the responsibility of life is a painful, and the failures of life are too much hurting you, pricking you, pinching you. The failures of life, insults of life are deeply hurting you. So unable to face. Then he doesn't know how to come out of it. Because mind is also such a delicate one, you cannot get rid of the mind, you can't handle the mind. Isn't it? You can't get rid of a mind. No, you don't know how to handle the mind, because mind is holding me. I can't handle it because mind handles me. I am so helplessly stuck to the mind, a particular nature of mind. Where am I going to go? This is the samsara. So in this samsara, he says, let us improve the mind. Let us slightly better learn samskara, good values, good discipline. Okay, learning values, discipline, working hard and trying to be a nice man, gentle man, little forgiving man, and also doing some punya, all that is good. But does it permanently and totally remove all your samsara? And because once you say samsara is real, there is no way of becoming totally free from samsara. You can only tentatively, partially suppress it, cover it up, suspend it, forget it, postpone it. Your sufferings are postponed. Taking a bail, where there is a sure punishment, to take a bail and come back and worry every day. Because you don't know on what day that judgment comes and you will be put behind the bars again. So it is like this, you can postpone and worry. You can take the bail, spend money and worry at home instead of worrying there. Okay, so like this, there are certain situations. Now, if samsara is real, you can only do all, superficial repair alone. You can never be free from this. But Siddhanti says, don't worry, there is a hope for you. Upanishad says, Brahma vida apnoti param, Brahma veda Brahmaiva bhavati. By this they imply, your samsara is not true. You are only thinking that you are a samsari. It is a notion upon you. You feel that it is, but it is only a feeling, not real you. Your real being is different from what you think of yourself. You have a thought, you have a notion about yourself. I am samsari, I am a karta bhokta, I am subject to birth and death. I am a limited individual. See, all these things, karta bhokta, limited individual, is a notion about you. It is not real you. I tell you, it is a good news. The Christians keep telling you good news. Here is a good news. God loves you is a good news. We are telling you that you are Brahman. This is the best news, not good news. Good news is a very shallow news. It is a deceptive news. The biblical good news is a shallow news, deceptive news, isn't it? It gives you high hope, but delivers little or nothing. It delivers little or nothing, but builds up lot of hope, but delivers very little. Okay, so therefore this is a deceptive news. It is a false news. It is a fake news. The best news is Vedantic news. Gospel, the word gospel means news, good news. What is the best news? Vivekananda told the same thing. I have a good news for you. Shunvantu sarve amrutasya putraha, you are already Brahman. See, it is not a news, it is not an informative knowledge that you would possibly become Brahman. No. It says, it doesn't promise that you will become Brahman tomorrow or after a lot of effort. You are already Brahman. You are already free from samsara. That samsara you think of is only a thinking. Samsara you think of yourself to be a samsari is only a thinking. It is not real you. What a good news, what an important. If it is real, I am really lucky. You are not ordinary lucky, you are absolutely lucky. You are not ordinary lucky, you are absolutely lucky because you are free from samsara. Samsara is a pure imagination. So this discovery itself is a great thing. Therefore, Tattvamasi, it says you are Brahman. Then if this is the Upanishadic message, Upanishadic teaching, it is a declaration, then Brahma Sutra is explaining the same thing. Supposing sometimes you heard something, somebody says something. some good news, government's announcement. Government announced that something good news, hereafter you will be going to get your promotion or money or something like that. You have not heard it, or you want to be, you didn't believe your ears. Is it true? Then you want to ask other, is it true what he said? You are going to get promotion, you are going to get more money. Then he says, yes, I have heard, it is true. Oh, that means when you hear again, you get confirmed. Sometimes you may hear, but it may be a passing statement, it is a joke, or it may be a simple fun. Therefore, what Upanishad says, is it true? Brahma Sutra analyzes the statement. It is not a joke. It is not a mocking. It is not a false assumption, false assurance. It is the real truth. So, Brahma Sutra analyzes and ascertains Upanishadic message as this and nothing but this. So, Brahma Sutras reveal, Upanishad reveals, Brahma Sutra analyzes and ascertains, Shankara explains and directly shows you, because Shankara is a guru, is a teacher. The teacher, taking the Upanishads and Brahma Sutra as a basis, he helps you to, he unfolds that in your anubhava, point by point, step by step, he helps you to unwind what is falsely you take upon yourself. What you falsely take upon yourself as an error, he shows you error is an error. It is not you. It disproves that adhyasa and helps you to discover that you are already free. Oh, that's a beautiful teaching. And there can never be a better person. There cannot be any other person whom you love and respect more than the Shankaracharya who teaches you this. Is there any person whom you revere, whom you respect more than this person who comes and teaches you that you are free from samsara? And I help you to understand. I can show you right now in your anubhava. I can help you to get the intuition. I can give you right now that anubhava that you are free from samsara. What a great luck. Even to find such a guru, to find such a teaching, and that he teaches you out of compassion. He doesn't expect anything from you, because there is nothing you can give him, because he is already free himself. What can you offer? What can you give him? There is nothing you can give him in return. The only thing you can give him is that you listen to his teaching and really understand, and you discover your freedom. You understand and discover that you are Brahman. That is the only thing you can do. Only dakshina you can give to Guru, because there is nothing else. You discover. You become free from samsara. You become Mukta Purusha. That is the only thing. Therefore, this is the thing. So, in Adhyasa Pratignya Bhashya, Purvapakshi says samsara is real. Therefore, tentatively you can suppress it. See, I use it to talk to people. People are too much emotionally attached. People are too much selfish and also. People say selfishness is natural. Possessiveness is natural. Attachment is natural. Once you start telling human weakness is natural, then terrorism is natural, then murder is natural, then what do you say? Up to what extent you can go? You talk to the modern psychology, it fools you. Do you know that? It says everything is natural. If there are more number of people, murderers in the society, if there are more people who subscribes to an ideology that killing alone is our religion, then it is a natural. See, if you start, somebody told this is not a philosophy, this is philosophizing the weaknesses, philosophizing the problem. It is not discovering the fact and solving the problem. You are only philosophizing the problem, you are defending the problem with your philosophy. So that you don't have to do anything. Because people try hard to get rid of the selfishness. Tell me, what can you? See, our politicians and intellectuals come and say, our constitution says, Gandhiji told we have to do like that. We have to be selfless, we have to be trustees, we have to, selflessly serve the society. Then you say, all politicians say, Mahavira's teaching, Shankara Jayanti comes, they say, Shankara's teaching is more relevant today than when Shankara taught. Then Mahavira Jayanti comes. Mahavira's teaching is more relevant to today than it was in those days. Then Buddha Jayanti comes, Buddha's Vaishaka Shuddha Panchami. Then you say Buddha's teaching is more relevant to our days than this thing. These are all routine statements of the politician. But more saints have come, more people have come. People have been telling, don't be selfish, don't be selfish. We all know we should not be selfish. But we only remain selfish and nothing can be done. Whatever you do, it remains the same thing. You may do tentatively, withhold, control and suppress your selfishness. But ultimately it has to come out in some or other manner. Some or other, because if selfishness is natural, what can you do? By suppressing, you become unnaturally, by being unnatural, you solve the problem. See, if selfishness is natural, can you solve the problem by being unnatural, being artificial? So this philosophy is a hopeless philosophy. It doesn't look a convincing philosophy. Hopeless means, unconvincing philosophy. But if you have no better philosophy, this is what we have. This is what the greatest philosophers, the greatest gurus of the society, gurus means leaders of the society, say, be selfless as far as possible. As far as possible means what? See, being what I am is my possible. Therefore, be that. As far as possible, what does it mean? If we say as far as possible, be selfless. This as far as possible is too relative. Anybody can choose anything. Somebody says that what I am is the only thing possible with me, therefore I am selfless. Because you can't be a better person. Why should I struggle hard so much? Why should I suppress my instinctive feelings and try to do something against my wishes? Therefore, people forcing find very difficult. Then where will you go? Purva Pakshi says, problem is natural. Then there is no way of transcending it, getting rid of it or overcoming it. But Siddhanti says, it is the best news, not good news. The best news. And there can never be, nobody has improved over Advaita. That samsara is false, you are already liberated. Is there any school of philosophy in the entire schools and traditions within East and West? You take up all the philosophies all over the world. Is there any teaching which tells that you are already free? You only have to turn inward and discover that you are already free. That I am bound is only a wrong notion. Is there, that's all. Can you improve over this philosophy? People say, we will liberate you, you can do something, we will help you, we will show you the path. You believe as Jesus and after death something will happen. Who knows after death what will happen? Whether you will go to heaven or you will remain in the coffin box, permanently here alone. Who knows? So this is a belief. Belief is a belief. In the belief, anything is a belief. In the darkness, all cows are black, somebody told. Somebody told, in the darkness, all cows are black. You don't know whether the cow is red or black or white. Isn't it? Red means a kind of brown. You don't know whether the cow is a white or black or brown. I think I have seen only 3 colors in the cow. Did I see any other color? No, I haven't seen any other color. Only 3. You don't know all the 3. Because in belief, everything is a belief. You don't know which one to choose. All beliefs are totally blind. So you don't know which, each one propagates, you believe our prophet, our God, you will get liberation. You will go to heaven. When? After death. First thing is after death, what happens, nobody knows. Have you seen it? He says, I too don't know. Then who has seen it? Even your prophet has not seen, because as long as he is alive, he doesn't know. Once he is dead, he never comes back. How does your prophet, how does your only son knows it? And even if he knows, it may be true of him. What about my case? See, these are all beliefs alone. No, we don't say we shouldn't believe, but belief also should have some meaning, some convincing logic behind it. But it looks too blind belief. Since we want to be free from samsara, since we want to be free from dukkha, see, a person want to be free from dukkha. You make any false promises. Okay, I'll liberate you. Come on. If somebody is sick, somebody has got cancer, and he will believe you any nonsense. I tell you, you believe me, you give me 1,000 rupees, I'll give you medicine. He will believe because he wants to be free. It is a human necessity, human predicament that he wants to be free from the disease. You tell him any lies, he will believe you. He not going to verify. Even if you prove that he is a liar, still he believes him because it is a deeper need in him want to be free. Therefore, some of the religions and some of the non-religions also exploit the human weakness by telling you, you believe us and you will become free. But they have failed in number of cases. No disease they could cure. They could not cure any disease. But still they go on playing with your emotions and faith. And you also end up believing because you have no other choice. See, what a helpless situation it is. It is the human weakness, human nature, that we want to be free from disease. We are suffering, we are poor, we want money. We have no status, I want status, I want to go to America and lot of money. If somebody gives me freely money, you don't know how indirectly he is enslaving you, but he offers you money now. Therefore, this fraud, deception, fooling goes on in the name of religion, and religions themselves, some of the religions themselves are frauds and deceptions, because they play with your human weaknesses. And we don't see how the solution he is offering is illogical and impossible. That you believe him, after death you will be free, you will be totally free from sukha, free from dukkha, and eternally you will remain. How do you know eternally? How do you know you will be free from dukkha? We don't know, because we wish. There is an unconscious wish in our heart that we want to become free. And whoever tells the lie also you believe, because you don't verify what he says is right or not. You don't look at what he says is logical or illogical. There is a need, there is a wish in me, unconscious, deep wish in me. And he plays with that wish. Most of the religions play your wish. And you end up believing it. Therefore, belief issues from that deep need, deep wish. And that belief becomes inevitable. Only you have to channelize the belief more meaningfully, more convincingly, more understandably. The belief should not be a fraud and then deception. But that's what it is. Do you see the world? If you watch it, how people are living, how the religions are, because the religious people, the religious teachers themselves are under the fraud. They themselves are brainwashed to think, to believe that a false, illogical thing. And he starts spreading it to others. It goes on. Andhenaiva niyamana yathandah. A blind man promises to lead another blind man. You see, you imagine yourself to be a blind man, how helpless the poor man is. Here is a blind man. I have seen in one place on the roadside. He is asking people, will you help me to cross this road? Will you help me to cross this road? He asks. Whenever he hears a sound of somebody walking near him, sir, will you help me to cross the road? He asks. And he thinks that any footsteps he hears, the sound of the footsteps he hears, he thinks that somebody has come. And he thinks that, you see, blind man, you know what blind man thinks is, everybody who comes to him is capable of seeing, I alone am blind. Does he ever ask you, sir, are you blind or do you have eyes? You never ask. Whenever somebody goes near him and talks to him, he says, sir, will you help me to cross? But why should he take him for granted that the other person has got eyes? He thinks that other person has eyes. You imagine, you look at a blind man. It is a very helpless situation, pitiable situation. And whoever comes to him, he requests him, sir, will you take him? And that fellow thinks that, why should I admit that I am a blind man? He says, come on. So each one are trying to hold the hand. So he puts his hand here and that fellow's hand is here. After a little trial, then they touches the hand. He holds it. He thinks that the other person whom I am holding is a person with eyes. The person with a sight. This blind man thinks the other man has eyes and tries to hold on to his hand. And that fellow, come on, let us go. And where will they go ultimately? They will go under some truck or car, because both of them are blind. And this fellow thinks that, oh, I have got a person who is holding my hand. I am holding a hand of a person. He has got eyes. He will take me. I will definitely cross the road today and go home. He will not go home. He will end up hospital or he will end up somewhere else. Because you are holding another person himself blind. Another person who is himself blind. Similarly, these are all most of the people making a fraud. Because deception is, then not only the ignorance, in between selfishness also is operating in it. Therefore, Vedantic good news is, it shows you clearly how you are adhyasa. See, it shows you. Now he says, I will show you how adhyasa is. Vedantin directly shows you Niranubhava. If you are prepared to see, all that you require is prepared to see. If you are willing to see, if you are open-minded, I can just point out the facts in your life. I am not asking you to believe me. That you believe me you believe me my only son, you believe me my prophet. After death I will go to you. After death, how do you know? How do I know that you are a only son of God or you are a prophet of God? He says, God told me that I am a prophet, you believe me. then who is that God? Who is that God? And did he tell you really? Or you yourself assume it in the name of God? Or did he tell you? And what is the witness that when God is telling you, is there a witness? When God is telling you, he heard it? And he says, no, there was nobody, only God told me privately in my mind. Then how do you believe that? Whether God told you or your own mind is imagining. It could be your own imagination, it could be your own wishful thinking also. So this is just unverifiable belief. One belief is a support of another belief and another belief and another belief. Goes on, belief is supported by another belief. That is supported by another belief. Goes on. We don't say don't believe, but we say belief is a belief. You can't verify anything. But Vedanta says that is an adhyasa. We shall show you right now. Okay. Therefore, first Purvapakshi says how adhyasa is not possible. Why adhyasa is not possible? He starts telling. So I will just read out the Bhashyavakya and then Swamiji's explanation of it. See, how adhyasa is not possible also is a very interesting argument. Argument means it is analysis of observation of our experience. It is not an argument simple. It is an analysis. It is not simple analysis. It is observation of our experience. And is pointing out. Okay. Yashmad asmat pratyaya gocharayoh vishaya vishayinoh tama prakashavat viruddha swabhavayoh itaretaranupapattau siddhayam tad dharmanam api sutaram itaretara bhavanupapattihi. Okay. Subject, object cannot come together. How adhyasa is impossible, he is telling. By the time I just gave this introduction, that the basic idea, total vision of the Pratignya Bhashyas, first sentence Purvapaksha and Siddhanti. What they say, just an outlines I gave you. Now they go into it to show how adhyasa is not possible. Purvapakshi analyzes the experience and shows. Siddhanti points out the same anubhava. You look at the anubhava properly, you have looked at it wrongly. Now he shows in your anubhava that there is adhyasa. How he is going to show? We'll see tomorrow. See, with this introduction alone, 1 hour is over. Okay, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat.